the scenario, as far as Everton is concerned, is the damage has been done and they've had 10 points inflicted upon them. What we've got coming this week is either a rowing back from that or reinforcement of it. I don't think there's any indication that they're going to get sanctioned further in this instance for this appeal, i.e. you made an appeal, so we're going to give you a bigger punishment. So it only gets better or stays the same. The bigger concern for Everton hasn't got to be this appeal, has got to be what happens next, because there's more coming down the track for them. And I fail to understand how, if they were to maintain the sanction or even to reduce it by 2 points,
right,
and they get done again for the same offence, I thought if you were a recidivist, you got bigger punishments. If you go to prison for robbery and you come out after, I'm not suggesting Everton are robbers, but I'm saying if you commit a crime, whatever the crime is, you come out of prison, you do the same crime again, you tend to get a bigger sentence.
Sure.
So I wouldn't be too optimistic for that. But the bottom line is that it can only get better for Everton this week in the short term, because if the football leverage and the football pressure and all of that nonsense is brought to bear on the independent panel that must have had good reasons in their mind to award 10 points, unless they were doing it to make a point and then always going to reduce it on appeal, then it only even maintains the same. Everton must be doing what they should be doing, which is the 10 points is gone. We've got to win games to stay in the Premier League on the back of losing these 10 points, rather than bank on some ideal of getting 3 or 4 points back. No one knows what they're going to get back. Nobody. Not Jamie Carragher, not your mate Stefan Borson. Nobody knows what they're going to get back.
My mate Stefan Borson. Actually, someone close to it is of a mind that the appeal will be sent to parties for typo checking, etc. There'll be a strict embargo. It could be it might have been 10 o'clock this morning, it might be 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. Anyway, we will know. Is there a feeling, do you share this feeling, Simon, that the fans have a right to know, and that employees and fans of clubs need to know when to expect these judgments, so that they're ready for it as well? I mean, this is, Evertonians would say this is our club, so we're on a need-to-know basis as to when to expect the news. When
you bring a court action and you take someone to the High Court, like I did with some of the guests on Breakfast Show this morning, apparently, Ian Dowie, you wait for an outcome. You don't get to say, well, I tell you what, Your Honour, I want to know the outcome when I want to know it. You get to go through the process. And of course we see this cloak and dagger stuff. We see the ridiculousness of Richard Masters saying, I'm not going to tell you when the hearing is going to be had with Man City because it's prejudicial to do so. What a lot of old cobblers. The bottom line is that it's reasonable to communicate. It's also reasonable to be effective in time. And if the appeal has been heard recently, which it has, and the verdict is coming out now, then that's timely. Now, if you've got a situation where no one knows when the appeal is going to be heard, no one knows when the adjudication is going to, and it's kicked into the long grass, that's when people should be dissentful and unhappy about it. Well, if
anybody needs to know, it's the Everton fans. Well, they need to know most.
Well, they do and they don't.
And the employees of the club.
What they know is they've got a 10-point penalty.
Right.
And that's what I would bank if I were an Everton fan. If I got anything back, I would consider that to be a bonus. Everton are out of the bottom 3 now. Their job is to get outcomes in the remaining 13 or 14 games or whatever they've got left, enough to be away from the relegation. And if they get some points back, then that's a bonus. So right now, if I'm an Everton fan, I'd be sat there going, I've got a 10-point penalty. That's what I've got.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough.
Nothing's determining their future now. They're out of the bottom 3. The only thing that determines their future is winning games on the football field. And if they get some of those points back, that's a gimme. That's an added bonus.
You would have thought last night, I mean, we'll get to this later on.
There's no quality there, is there?
With everything that's going on away from the field of play, those Everton players, not that I'm suggesting there was a lack of effort.
Oh, there was effort.
But they would have given blood, sweat and many tears to get 3 points last night.
But they did, but they had no quality. I mean, it doesn't help when you've got a centre forward that's got a 50-piece head. But the point is that, they created chances. It was a poor game. And Palace set up in a certain way to be able to come out of that game with something. And it was 2 football teams bereft of confidence. And I get tired of hearing this idea because these footballers run around with big mouths telling us how much they're worth. Yet all of a sudden, they go on a bad run and they've got no confidence. I mean, where's the substance in these guys? But the point is the crowd were quiet. The atmosphere was nervous. And I think Sean Dyche summed it up pretty well. In terms of his analysis, they got a point out of a game, and that's probably 2 points lost in their mind. But notwithstanding that, they build a bit of momentum. They go into the next game and they get an outcome out of that.
Again with Everton, and I'm talking about 777 Partners. It's now 158 days since the announcement that the US investment firm, the very same 777, had agreed to purchase Mashiri's majority shareholding. By comparison, 51 days between the agreement and the approval of Sir Jim's investment into Manchester United.
Yes, a minority shareholding, though, isn't it?
Yeah, but I mean, tell us the process here, Simon.
Well, the process is you have to look at the money and look at who's bringing the money in. And there's a lot to be said about this 777 capital, because if you look behind the scenes at where this money's coming from, I'm not even entirely sure the money that lent Everton is theirs.
Yeah.
I think it comes from an insurance company that's just underwriting some of the debts that this 777 capital have got. There's a restructuring of their entire asset base, including the football clubs that they own, and Everton is being used to justify some of the funding that they've got on other football clubs. So if I'm an Everton fan, I'd be very worried, and I think they are. Talking to the fella that I was talking to the weekend, who, by the way, is a multi-millionaire, so knows what he's talking about.
Why doesn't he wade in?
Because he's sensible. He's sensible.
Right.
I mean, years ago, I talked to him and one of his other colleagues who's a billionaire about owning a football club, and they're like, well, we're not all mad like you, Simon.
Thanks, but no
if we
thanks.
want to support a football club, we'll buy a season ticket.
Right. I mean, Richard Masters has actually spoken about these perceived
That'll be
delays.
that'll be insightful.
He's spoken in the past, not this morning, but about delays in regards the Everton takeover and regards 777's involvement. This is what he said.
Charge was made in March 23 for the first Everton case. The case was then eventually heard in October. We did make a plea at the time to try and hear the case towards the end of the season, but Everton argued against that and the Commission agreed with them. That's why it was heard in October. And then the independent commission, I just made the point so everyone understands the process that we have. Charging decisions like that are heard by an independent panel, which is selected from legal and financial experts appointed by the panel chair, Murray Rosen, KC, and he's responsible for populating the panel and appointing the panel. The Premier League has nothing to do with it. So the decisions that are made in respect of the charge are out for the PSRs, and indeed the sanction were made by an independent panel, independent of the Premier League, independent of the executive, the board, and the clubs.
So that was Masters on, of course, the appeal.
Yeah.
On the appeal.
Well, given the fact that we very rarely understand what he's talking about and doesn't give us much insight, the fact that we were billing it as the 777 capital bit don't make a lot of difference, because we probably learnt more about it from that particular insert.
Yeah, I mean, we hear that 777 remain optimistic and claims the Premier League approval could arrive this month. Could arrive, might arrive. When will it arrive?
Well, I mean, I don't suspect that unlike the theory that there's conspiracy theories running amok, like Masters just explained in that little bit about the processes that are involved in hearing a tribunal.
Right.
And what people don't get to hear is how uncooperative or how difficult the football clubs themselves are about the process. So all people get to hear is, well, why is it taking so long? Well, look internally and maybe the machinations of your own football club as to the reasons why it takes longer to deal with an appeal. Then going on to the 777 capital situation, this is a challenging one, because Mashiri is the person that's selling the football club. He's the one that wants away from it. He doesn't care really, despite his protestations about wanting to hand it over to the best stalwarts for the club going forward. He's done his commercial deal. Off he goes into the sunset. It then becomes about the Premier League being able to make sure that every aspect of the takeover meets all of the requirements, the origin of funds, the mechanisms that are being deployed, why these people are buying the football club, what their plans are going forward, ad infinitum. And with this group of people, if you look into their background, I did some reading of them over the weekend, just by chance, because I came across something talking about how they're funding the debt that they put into Everton.
Yeah.
And what that's costing Everton, and why that funding is in place in the first place, and what it's propping up for 777 Capital in terms of their other acquisitions, Standard Liège and other football clubs that they've got. This does not look like a great transaction for Everton Football Club. It looks like a good transaction for 777 Capital, which of course it should be, because they don't want to buy something that's a pup for them.
Sure.
But Everton have got to look at, they're out of the frying pan here.
Yeah.
And they may just be in the fire.
Yeah, I mean, various Evertonians getting in touch this morning saying, it leaves me far from optimistic, says Chris, that as soon as we know the result of the appeal, that another charge may hit the football club.
Well,
I think you raised an important point. Did you not say a short time ago that Everton resisted the hearing during last season? It's their fault. There are two charges in one season.
Well, yeah, because they wanted to deal with it in a fashion that suited their timings and their agenda.
Yeah.
And now the consequences of that is that potentially they've got another charge coming down the line. Again, there may be another one following that, because as the fella Stephen Borson came in the other day and talked about analysing, because obviously got a lot of free time on his hands, he analyses the balance sheet and reads every single dot and comma on an appeal and projects that the balance sheet and the cost implications of Everton look like they're going to show another loss. Now, if that's the case, then you are staring into the face of the potential abyss. But they can only deal with what they can deal with now. Now, if they get through this season and they manage to stay in the Premier League, and if they stay with the 10-point penalty, I've always maintained, without any great degree of scientific understanding, but a principle of a gut feel, and my nose tells me that they might get a reduction of this points penalty and then get it whacked back on top again with the next sanction and end up in the next same position.
Yeah.
If they can get out of jail and they get another sanction next season, the only argument I find flawed is the point I've just made. If you've done something wrong once, surely you're going to get the same punishment if you repeat the offence.
Well, you would think
and
so,
you repeat the offence, it's going to get worse and worse and worse.
I don't think you're wrong thinking about that. So at the end of the day, it could be 1 step forward, 2 back for Everton. Everton set to receive a verdict on their appeal against that 10-point deduction for this breach of Premier League profit and sustainability rules. Sometime this week, maybe today, maybe very soon, maybe tomorrow, but whenever it is, we'll bring you it, and we'll bring you the reaction first and fastest right here on talkSPORT.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.